Earl was a no-good son of a bitch. He was a monster in every sense of the word. He was a mountain of a man and loved using his size to intimidate anyone he could. He lived in a rundown trailer with his wife and 2 girls. His wife Darla seemed to have a permanent black eye, and their 2 little girls would shake whenever he came into the room. He enjoyed hurting others, even his own children. Their only reprieve from the man's abuse came from his occupation. Earl was a truck driver. He drove his big rig all over the country, leaving his family for weeks at a time. That wasn't to say that the world was safe for those weeks. Earl was notorious for picking up any pretty runaways he could find. Many never left his truck, and those who did were changed forever. It was a rainy night when Earl set his eyes on his prey. Her name was Shannon, and was waving anyone down that happened to be driving down the lonely interstate. She sure was pretty with long, midnight black hair and dark blue eyes. Most importantly, she was vulnerable. Earl stopped and opened his truck door to let the drenched girl inside. They introduced each other, and Earl started taking off. "Car trouble?" he asked her. He always made sure to keep a friendly demeanor until he could find a proper pit stop to have his fun. It was easier that way. There would be no crying or stupid questions or pleas for mercy. "More like luck trouble," she laughed quietly. "I ran out of gas. I called AAA, but they said that my location in the storm, no one would be out until the morning. I know of a gas station just a while ahead. We'll get you some gas and you'll be on your way in no time," he assured her, his blood pumping to the rhythm of his rapid windshield wipers. They made idle chit-chat as the rain pelted the truck. Shannon turned in her seat and looked at Earl. "Thank you so much. This is what I get for trying to make a long trip during a full moon. People say things always get wonky on a full moon." She pushed her head forward. "You can't even see the moon, with all the storm clouds." "Well, aren't you scared?" he questioned. "Or the werewolves?" he finished with a joking grin. Shannon laughed. "Hadn't thought much of that. I guess the rain and the lack of gas distracted me," she replied with a smile. "You into that sort of thing? Monsters, I mean?" "I've loved watching monster movies since I was a child," he said, "but my favorite monster has always been a werewolf. It used to amaze me as something so simple as the power of the moon turning the weakest of men into the most furious of beasts. Instant power," he ended with a wolfish grin. I've always seen werewolves in such a different light," Shannon began. "Victims of a curse, never truly wanting to hurt anybody but forced to all the same. It sounds more like a tragedy than a victory to me. Way I see it, there are 2 types of creatures out there, predators and prey. Predators can't waste their time pitying their prey. Being the apex predator, it's like a gift ordained from God himself. It's a gift to do whatever the hell you want." His voice was thick with narcissism. Shannon's eyes seemed to register the type of man she was truly sitting next to, but by then, they were already pulling into an abandoned pit stop. The truck came to a wobbling stop as Earl turned to look at her in the eyes. "We're in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and no one is going to hear you scream, so I wouldn't bother. Don't bother running neither. It will only annoy me, and rest assured I am faster than you," he said. All traces of kindness washed from his face. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked, the question lingering in the air. "Eventually," he replied, "when I'm done with you." Shannon's face lit up. "Finally," she whispered to herself before pouncing on the lumbering man. Her canines grew to large fangs as she bit down hard into his neck, sucking his blood greedily. Earl tried to fight her off, but she was so much stronger than he was. Before he could fall into unconsciousness, she pulled her fangs out. Her once blue eyes had turned to a dark red. "The last man to stop had been a perfect gentleman. He made sure my tank was filled up and even offered to buy me a meal before taking off. I never kill men like that. I may be a vampire, but I'm not a monster," she said with a laugh. "But men like you're a dime a dozen. You see some sweet thing and you show your true colors, always assuming to be the apex predator," she finished, before sinking her fangs back into his neck and draining the last of his blood from his body. She let his body slump over, then serenely walked back out into the rain. She felt fulfillment in more ways than one. Monsters take many forms, and she had just killed one.